Do you spend more time doom scrolling than you care to admit? I am so guilty of this, you would not believe. I very frequently end up down that rabbit hole, which was why I was so excited when the lovely Christine from Courageous Painting came up with this. A game to turn doom scrolling into a creative practice. Let's try it out.
So Christine has called this Sketchbook Bingo, and basically we have a list of 25 prompts that you could use, and there's also a blank sheet so you could do one where you create your own prompts too. I'm just covering these up because I'm going to choose them at random.
Okay, so the first number is 13, the free choice.
So I started scrolling Instagram. I just kind of went with my feed. And I chose Instagram because I think most of my arty sort of things come up in Instagram feed, but in hindsight I should have probably gone onto the like homepage and chose some sort of art thing, because there was a lot of nonsense came up as well. But I was quite taken with this particular reel here. So this was somebody who created neurographic art, but then chopped it all up and created different patterns out of it. And I thought that would be a really fun way of making collage fodder or making bits and pieces that would work incredibly well for art journaling. So I thought I would give this a go. Now this has the name now of Neurographic art. I used to do this all the time when I was in school. We didn't call it that then. We basically just scribbled in a page and coloured in the little bits, and that's essentially what I did. And so this is dead easy. Anybody can do this. It's like literally just colouring in shapes. Now me being me, I did sort of want to give each shape slight dimension, so I did sort of go in with a darker colour in some of the elements to create little bits of shadow areas. And I went with my usual bold, bright colours. So we have a hot pink, we have a yellow, there's a gorgeous teal that I'm using now, and then eventually we are going to switch into a gorgeous sort of lime green colour. Then once I have got the main colours down, I decided to block the sides out in black. It looks a bit random and messy, but this is one of these ones that you just kind of keep growing. It's so simple, and yet it creates really stunning artwork. So once I had done the background, I then went in and traced through all of these lines. Now some people put the lines in first and then colour. I just decided to do it this way because I knew that alcohol markers would bleed, so when I put the paler colours in it would kind of move them a little bit. So I decided to do this. Also, I really struggled in editing here to keep my head out. I was having to concentrate so hard to make the lines smooth that I kind of had to stick my face in the page. The thing that makes it neurographic is these soft curved lines. So you go in and everywhere where there's a point, you just soften that and create a little curve. And you do that through all the different pieces until it's a nice sort of soft shape. Once I had finished doing that, I decided to add a little bit of extra detail using a white gel pen, which we will come into right now. I was having difficulty getting a pen that was opaque enough. I sort of switched between my Posca and my Hoo marker because I was wanting to make these nice big sort of dotted elements, and I think this really just helped to make it pop. I didn't, but you could sort of add different designs in each colour. Now this bit hurt because at this point I loved it and I really wanted to leave it, but the whole point of this was to chop it up and to use it in art journals. So I chopped it in half, and then in one half I cut all of these little circles out, very much like I had seen in the reel, and these were going to be used in my page. I also think it would be really cool, and I might do it another time, is to kind of draw really loose leaves and flowers. That would make fun collage fodder as well. So I opened up my journal and I thought the colours in it went really well with this page that was opposite, and so I decided to do something with this. So I also wanted to use all the little scraps, so I tore those thinking it would make a good edging to a feature image. So I was just getting a nice torn edge. I did sort of struggle, to be honest, getting the torn edge. I had to come in with my scissors a few different times, and I'd found this image. This is actually a freebie image. I will link to it in the description box below, but it's one of my free downloads if you would like to have a little play with this gorgeous little inky shroom. and I decided to frame this and pop it in, and then I was going to use the circles to sort of embellish the piece. I then decided that I kind of wanted it to not be exactly matching to the page beside it, but for the overall look, if you're looking at both the pages, to be cohesive. And in that page we had these sort of clouds made out of a paper, storybook paper. So I cut out some clouds and added them to the page. And once I had stuck them down, like the other page, I just sort of knocked them back with gesso a little bit, so they weren't as harsh and they were sort of slightly softened. So I fiddled around with that a little bit and then came into trying to add these circles, and now I just felt the circles really didn't fit. I tried different configurations, and in the end I went and got a bit of paper that matched the other side and used that as a base. Created a few more doodles around the clouds, and then as you can see I stuck in those circles just coming behind the flowers and added the blue. Now I actually really love this page, but I don't think that I gave the collage fodder that we were actually creating the heroes, it didn't stand out on the page. It was a nice sort of subtle detail, but it wasn't what the page was about. So I just decided to finish this one off with a little bit of a doodly border. I also brought the blue that was in the other page across as well, again so that they're different pieces, but they do coordinate together. And then finally I just popped a little sentiment down that says, let yourself bloom in creativity. So that was that page done, but as I said, I didn't feel like those kind of collage fodder pieces really made a statement at all. So I wanted to try again where they were much more the focal part of the image. So I went to another page in my journal. This is a handmade journal, and so I have got all sorts of bits and pieces in. So I have a diary page there, but I decided to knock it back with a little gesso so you could still see the details, but it wasn't quite as stark. And I kind of just stuck all of these circles down. I didn't have a clue what direction I was going to be going in with this, but I just sort of stuck them down and thought I would view that as a starting point and see what occurred as we started to play. Now, anytime I add an element of something like this, I like to create a shadow. So I pulled out my Inktense pencils, sort of scribbled around the edges of each of the circles, and then gradually pulled that out with a little bit of water to create some kind of shadows. I have to admit that I did go quite heavy-handed. I should have left it about here, but I didn't. You know, I kind of went more is more, and then kept thinking I'll fix it with a bit more, and then I'll fix that with a bit more. And so by the end, the page looked quite grey, as you can see. So I've pulled out some of the lovely Louise Sims new stamps by Art Inspirations and decided just to build a background. So I used this text one and sort of stamped all over it. I actually love how the text looked over the kind of neurographic art. I think that worked really, really well. And then I decided to use her other set of stamps for the focal image. So this is this gorgeous sort of film strip with these flowers around, and I pulled out my alcohol markers and coloured them in with the same colours that I had done with the neurographic art. This was really basic, simple colouring. I didn't go really heavy-handed with the blending, just a very simple blend, because there's going to be so much going on in the page and so much colour that it's not a piece where I felt that we needed sort of detail blended. I did need to do a little bit, because it's me, I have to add a little bit of shading in it, but not as much as I want. And I loved how that popped off the page. The stamp set also has a couple of extra pieces, so I stamped those out as well and just built the page up. And I definitely feel like this one sort of kind of made better use of the neurographic art in the page. It's definitely more of a statement piece and you can see it a lot better. Finally, I just added some white doodles. I was having real issues with my gel pen. I was having to go over it 2 or 3 times, so it's not that gel pen, white paint pen, so I think I need a new white pen. If anyone wants to invent a white paint pen that kind of keeps going forever, you'd be a millionaire. I find that they just like to be new, and then after a while they just give up. So that was that page, and then I decided how much I loved the actual neurographic art. As I said, I did find it quite painful to chop up. So I decided, you know what, I'm just going to stick that down in the journal itself as a piece to tie it in with the other page. I added a little bit of stamping over it, and as I said, I really liked how that worked, having the sort of text detail in there, and a tiny little sentiment to finish it off. and I think that makes a really nice 2-page spread. Now, as you can see at the side, I had the tiniest little strip left, so I decided just to sort of flip that over and stick this down. I don't do anything with this today, but it will be a starting point for a page in a future project. And once we have done that, you can have a look at the 2 pages together, and I love how this turned out.
And the second number is 14. And that is fill an entire spread with one object in multiple styles.
So again, I went looking on Instagram and I was taken by a card with the quirky birds. I love drawing quirky birds and I haven't done it in so long. And once that idea was in my head, although I looked at other stuff, it just wasn't registering. I just really, really wanted to draw a quirky bird. So I just pulled out my sketchbook. This is just my regular sketchbook that I do all my loose, messy sketches in. It's not one that I create sort of finished pieces in, so we're not working on the best paper. Also, I'm working really heavy handed with like a 6B pencil, but that's just more so that you can see it as I draw. And I drew out a few little sort of weird quirky birds, and yeah, I had an absolute blast doing this because it was so much fun. So once I had got all of these onto the page, I then decided to pull out some watercolours, but I did it by using my Ecoline markers. So I quite like it when it comes to Ecoline markers, is just sort of scribbling them down on a plastic surface. I'm just actually using my stamping block, and you can water them down and just use them very loosely as sort of very loose watercolours. So that's what I did. I sort of went around the different birds, just putting out a very loose base layer down on all of these different birds. I was deliberately going outside the lines. As I said, I wanted it really loose and sketchy and fun. I said this isn't a place for my most gorgeously finished rendered pieces. This is just a place to play and experiment. Also, I was just drawing over really heavy-handed sketched lines, so we were just going with the flow and seeing what occurs. The good thing about using the Ecoline pens is that you can sort of then come in and get the shadow areas, and I find that that is really quite good. That helps to give it depth. So once I'd done that, again, I just sort of loosened it with a bit of water and sort of picking up a bit of paint from the palette as well, and I find that that gives it a softer blend when it comes to working with the Ecoline pens, and I had an absolute blast. And I have to say, the blooms on these birds are just so cute. I ended up using so much water that we have some gorgeous blooms on these by the time that they are finished. And I love the fact that when I'm painting these, that they just look so messy. I love the fact that they are so loose and so messy, and they look kind of terrible at this point. It really does take the black line work to come in for them to start looking any good, but I had so much fun playing, and I wasn't even using the right paper. I mean, I was literally putting layer upon layer, putting these pens on, adding more water, and we're in sketchbook paper, so it did get rather sort of, I pushed the paper to its limits. It wasn't happy by the time I'd finished, but I had fun nonetheless. I mean, look at that top blue one. The blooms on it are just gorgeous. And then I put the leftover paint in my sidekick journal because we don't waste anything. And it did amuse me that the page I'd picked had a quirky bird on the other side. That was rather ironic. It shows I just love to draw them. And then I kind of came in with a black acrylic marker. I think as soon as the eyes go in, they sort of stop looking weird and start looking like something. So we have eyes and sketchy lines. Now, it's at this point I'd had an absolute blast playing with paint, and I was putting this gorgeous sketchy style together, which I kind of discovered when I did the kind of 1 hour challenge. I really like it looking really loose and sketchy and messy. I think it's very forgiving. But I realised that it was supposed to be fill a page with the same object in different styles, and I really hadn't done that. I'd done 4 quirky birds that were all quirky, all had a quirky style, and I'd actually coloured them all in exactly the same way. I had done them all with this very loose watercolour style, gone in and added a sketchy outline, so I really hadn't filled the brief. I mean, I'd had fun, and I still class this as a win because I'd stopped scrolling. At this point, I had spent a good couple of hours Well, I spent about 4 hours on the first project, and now on this one, I was probably a couple of hours in, and I was having a blast. So I still think it worked because the challenge is to stop doom scrolling, even if I didn't exactly finish the prompt. But I decided I didn't really want to start doing realistic birds. I want to stick with quirky birds. So I decided to draw some more and at least colour them in using different mediums. So I'd sort of semi-filled the brief. So this one here, she has a crazy hairstyle. This is my least favourite ones of all the birds that I did. But this one I decided to colour using acrylic markers. I try and get a little bit of a soft blend, but that's a bit more tricky when it comes to your acrylic markers. But I just wanted her to have like this really colourful plumage on her head and down the wing, and so we sort of went a little bit mental with with the acrylic markers, but I did have a lot of fun. And should I bring out more Quirky Bird stamps? We've had a few, haven't we? I did have a couple of digital sets for a while, and we had the original Quirky Birds of stamps, and then we had the Winter Birds. But drawing these has made me want more. Do we want more? Or is it just me that's obsessed? So anyway, so this one, as I said, with acrylics, and again, you just sort of see it come to life when you start putting that black doodly border in. For the second one, I am reaching for my pencils, so I'm going to take out a selection of the Faber-Castell pencils and colour this one in. This is a bit tricky to show because it's like, to get a really good pencil blend, you have to kind of go in lots of little soft layers. But I sort of gradually built it up from yellow into green into blue. And I tried with this one not to add sort of line work with the pen. I was trying to sort of deepen the various areas just using the pencils themselves, just to try and create a different look. Because this was my aim for this page, was yes, the Quirky Birds are gorgeous, but at least let's mix up the mediums. Let's kind of get closer to the challenge that the lovely Christine had set for us. So finish off this little bird here with a little bit of black pencil just to kind of create the lines and grounder. Now this one, I'm going to go quickly past this one because one thing I've learned as I've gone through the editing stage is if I colour with biro, I really need to film on the side because you're not really seeing what's happening underneath my hand. So we very quickly did that one with biro. And finally, for the last one, I am coming in with my alcohol markers. Alcohol markers are probably my preferred medium, so I'm a lot more confident with these. But again, this is sketchbook paper and not the normal paper that I would use for alcohol markers. So we're not going to get the sort of same finessed result, but he still looks incredibly cute. I have to say though that when it came to the line work of this, I did switch out and get a different pen because it was going to be harder to do that in an actual alcohol marker. But I think these guys are utterly adorable, and I can see them making an appearance again very, very soon.
Wow, that was so much fun. I honestly have spent about 8 hours creating the things that I've shared in this video today. And to be honest, when I first started filming this video, I filmed me picking 5 different prompts so that I'd have enough to keep this video going. But once I kind of got the idea, I got locked in, and you know, one idea became 3 pages, the next one became 2, and so from 2 prompts I got 8 hours of crafting. So it's amazing. So definitely go try it out. Pop over to Christine's channel and get the download. I will link to the video where you can find it. If you enjoyed this video, shall I complete the page? Shall we try out the rest of the prompts? Let me know in the comments below. Take care, and I will see you next Friday. Bye.